The page 45, Daf Mem Hey Amid Aleph. So the Gemara says, continuing what we finished off yesterday, we're talking about how many people from the Sanhedrin have to come to the place where the person was found dead on the Yatos, and now we said there was an argument if you need 3 or 5. But since there's some extra words that says they go out and they measure two plural, so Rabbi Yehuda said 5 before you need 9, 2 and 2, 4 more. Shimon says you need 3, you would need another 4 or 7. So how come we don't find that they need that? How come we don't darshan those extra words? They need more. So he says they both say we learn from those words the v'yotzu they go out them and not the shluchim, not the messengers, and madu, and they measure it. That meaning that even if it's so clear how close it is to the city or which city is closer, they still have to go through for a process of measuring because there's a mitzvah to measure. So the Gemara said the Mishnah that says you need 3 or 5 doesn't go according to Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov because Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says that the kenecha means you need the Sanhedrin. Sheftecha means the elder Sanhedrin. Sheftecha, your judges is the king and the Kohen Gadol. So we find that the both the king and Kohen Gadol, the word mishpat, the judgment is by them. Now the Gemara says according to Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, you need a king and the high priest. And Sanhedrin, so he says, but does he agree that Sanhedrin, it's either like Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon 3 or 5, or maybe he believes actually need the whole Sanhedrin. Rabbi Yosef says, I'll bring you a proof that you need the whole Sanhedrin. Because we find that a Zakim Mamri, that's someone who rules against the Chachamim, against the majority rule. So if they came up to Yerushalayim, but they went outside of the place of the Beis HaMikdash, somewhere in the walls, but outside the place of the Mikdash, and then he heard their ruling, and then he went back to the city and he ruled against them, so it's not considered the Zakim Mamre. Why? Because only if it happens, and if they heard the ruling from the Chachamim in the rightful place in the Beis HaMikdash, and then he went against it. But otherwise, it's not. So the question was, how many people went out to hear him and to talk to him? If only some of them went out, so maybe he's not even going against them. Maybe the people who remained in the Beis HaMikdash agreed with him. So obviously we must say that all of them came, the whole Sanhedrin came to that place outside of the Beis HaMikdash. So why would the whole Sanhedrin go out? Just like that, they're not allowed to go out. It says you always have to leave at least the number of 23 for a small Sanhedrin to staying there. Well, at least to sit like in a round circle, in a semicircle. So obviously they went out for a mitzvah. What kind of a mitzvah? To measure for a person who was found dead. And that's according to Rabbi ben Yaakov. So Abai says no, maybe they went to measure to add to the city of Yerushalayim and the Azara. There's other reasons they were allowed to go out to measure. And he brings a proof that you need 71 people when you measure to add to the city, etc. But we bring another place that agrees to Rabbi Yosef that he agrees that according to Rabbi ben Yaakov is the whole Sanhedrin, because we find that by Zakim Mamre, the reason they didn't get him was because they all went out either to measure the city or for the Eglah Rufa. So now we continue. We're saying if he was found hidden in a mound, or it was on a tree, hanging on a tree, so then he's not. We don't do the whole process of measuring. So let's say the Mishnah it goes going to Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbanan. Because we find a similar argument. It says that if you forget, some of the produce you were cutting in the field. So Rabbi Yehuda says prat l'tamim, but if it's hidden, it's not called shikha. Shikha means you forget it, but it's not hidden. The Chachamim say basada means even if it's hidden somewhere, it's also called shikha. So we would think that maybe there's the same argument, that when he says it can't be hidden in a mound, that goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, that it says it can't be hidden. The Rav says even this can go even according to the Rabbanan. Both of them follow the verse. Here in our verse, when it talks about someone who was found dead, it says someone who was found dead. You would think wherever he's found. But then it says Adam on top of the ground is coming to tell us only if it's on top of the ground. But there, when it talks about shivcha, it says that when you'll cut your field and you'll forget. So we think that the cutting is similar, forgetting similar to cutting, has to be above ground and not hidden. But to add basada, to add that even if it's hidden. So the Gemara says now, according to Rabbi Yehuda, how come you need to have a special verse to tell us that by shikha it's not hidden? Why don't we just say shikha is similar to cutting? The Gemara says taka true. Why do you have the word basada? So it actually adds the basada teaches us that even if you left something and it was uncut, it's also included. The Rabbanon, how do they know that uncut is included if they use it for something else? They know it because it says when you will cut something that's cut in your field. So it means it also includes extra words, includes that even if it was you forgot to cut a piece. Rabbi Yehuda needs it according to what Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Vo, in the name of Rabbi Lazar says that that when you find cut in your field, that if it's in your field, but not if it somehow jumped over, it got blown over to the field of your friend, shikha doesn't exist if it's in the field of your friend. Either the Chacham say, Besadcha tells us it's in your field, not in the other field. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't use Besada, Besadcha, he doesn't learn anything from it. Rabbi Yehuda asked now a question. What happens if there was shikha, but it wasn't lying on the field, it was lying on top of a stone or something else? So do we say that the air, the atmosphere in your field, the air rights, is like it's on the field? Or maybe we say because it's not actually on the field, it's not like it's on the field. So Rav Kahana said to Rav Papa, or some Rav Kahana said to Rav Zvid, let's learn from Rav Avod the name of Rav Lazar. Then what did he say? He said prat to exclude when it went when it blew into your friend's field. So from here we learn if it blew into your friend's field, you know it's not shikha. But if it's in your field, it's main shikha. The Gemara says, according to you, why do you have to say if it blew into the friend's field, even if it was lying there? Because it needs besatcha, it needs to be in your field. So who cares how it went there? Maybe you left it there. So here we know that even in your friend's field, even if it was lying, so blowing into your friend's field is just telling us how it comes into your friend's field that it got blown. But it could even be put there and it wasn't blown, and it would also be the same law. So therefore, we can't learn from there to exclude that if it's blown here and higher, it's not shikha. So Kashmaik, it comes to trying to bring a proof that Omer, that a bundle, that he wanted to take it to the city, and he put it on top of another bundle, and he forgot it. So the bottom is called shikha, but the top one is not called shikha. Rav Shimon ben Yitzhak Yehuda said the name of Rav Shimon that they're both not shikha, not the top, not the bottom. The bottom is not shikha because it's hidden. So shikha cannot happen in hidden, and the top is not shikha because it's lying on top. It's not lying on the ground. So we have both things working for us. So we see they're both arguing in the bottom if the bottom is considered shikha or not. Where Rav Shimon says they're not shikha. And the Tana Kama says it is shikha. But the Elyon, the top one, have been hold, it's not shikha. Either because it's tough, or it's because it's floating. The Gemara says that's not a proof. Because because he was holding on to it, to the top one, because he was holding on to it, it doesn't become shikha. Because anything you hold on to doesn't become shikha. Gemara says, really, if it's about holding on, why does it have to be on top of the friend? Even if it's in the field, once you're holding on to it, you make it chashuv that it's important to you, and it's not shikha. Gemara says it's true. So why does it say agava chavere? Because that's teaching us about the tachten. That the tachten is because it's to teach about the law of the tachten. That's what it says agava chavere. It says we're talking about the top one because it's on top. It's like hanging on top. So it says really it's like it's hanging on top, but really the law that's driving it's about the tachton. The Abaye says I am like Ben Azai in the markets of Tveria when he used to stand there and say, ask me any question, I'll be able to answer anything you want. So when the Rabbanan said Tabaye, two chalalim, there were two people found dead, one on top of the other. Where do you measure from? Do you say that min b'minoi? Let's say we're talking two amar, two buns, one on top of the other. So do you say that two min b'minoi, a dead person on top of that person is called tam? Or min b'minoi is not called tzaf, it's not called lying on top, it's like lying directly on the ground. And therefore, you would measure from the top one, because the bottom one is considered tam, the top one is not tzaf. Or do you say min b'minoi, the one kind with another is like tzaf, it's like floating. And min b'minoi is not called tamun, therefore you measure from the bottom one. Or maybe you say min b'minoi is tamun. And min b'minoi is tzaf, therefore you don't measure from either one. So Abaye says, he answered that we learned it already. We learned that Omer, that you took the one thing to the city and you put on top of another one, another bundle, and you forgot it. The tachton is shikha, but the top one, the bottom one is shikha, but the top one is not shikha. And Shimon, the name of Yehuda, says the name of Shimon that both of them are not shikha, both the top or the bottom because it's hidden, and the top because it's floating. So we would think that both Tanoim agree with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that the bottom is not that there's no tamun is not considered for shikha. Tamun is not considered tamun. So we think a body at the bottom is also not considered tamun. I mean, you don't have to. It doesn't apply by tamun. Something hidden. And this is the argument. The argument is the one says min bin min you have a tamun, a body on top of another is tamun, and therefore you don't measure. The bottom of one says that it's not called tamun. One type with another is not called hidden, and because it's not called hidden, therefore you have to measure from the bottom. So the Gemara says no, not necessarily. We can say they're both hold like Rabbi Yehuda. That min bin min one type or another is tamun, but the argument of Yehuda Rabbanan. Do you say Tamun is not considered Shikha? Do you say Tamun is considered Shikha? And we apply that the same to Halal, to a dead person. If so, why does it say on the top of the friend, even if he was covered with the Afar Tzreit, even was covered with the dirt, it's also called Tamun. The Gemara says true. But it tells the Rabbi Yehuda that even though it's Min Bin Minna, he's still considered Tamun, and you don't measure you don't measure from the bottom. So the bottom learned when it says Chalal, he was dead. Lechanuk, he wasn't choked. Chalal, no farfar, he's dead and he's not dying, but last breath. Badam in the ground and he's not hidden in the mountain. Neifel, he fell and he's not hanging on a tree. Basad in the field and not on the water. Lezer says, and all of them, if it was Chalal, if he was dead, meaning that he was killed by some kind of metal thing, like cut off, his head was cut off, that's a chol. His head was cut off, even if you had the other simanim, his head was cut off, you still measure. So we learned, they said to Rabbi Eliezer, that he said even if there was other conditions, if his head was cut off, then or was partially cut off, it falls in the situation. He says, don't you agree that if it was choked and he was hidden and he was thrown in the garbage, you don't do egla rufa? He says, why do you say chalal v'lei chanuk? So he says, obviously, so you say chalal means that it's not the choke. Also doing the ground means they're not hidden. It fell and not hanging on a tree. In the field and not on the water. The Lezer says, I have extra chalal for the situation, to add all of these, that therefore they're also considered, even if the other conditions considered, that it is you do the measure and the egla roof is brought forth. If it was next to a city or next to the border or next to the city of Menegoyim, because it says kimatze, if you will found prat the matze, but if you're next to the border, next to the city of Goyim, there are a lot of more people killed there, so therefore it's not unusual. Or you have to go to the city or if this next to the city has no bezdin, because you need the ziknei here, the elders of the city, the bezdin, and there isn't. You don't measure from a city only to see there's a bezdin. It's obvious. Since we learned that the city that has no bezdin, you don't measure. I know that you don't measure to a city that has no bezdin. Why do you have to tell us? It's coming to teach us. How do you know if you were next to a city that has no bezdin that you measure it to the next city that has a bezdin? That's what we learned from extra words that you do that. Now the Mishnah says, a new Mishnah. If you was found exactly between two cities, they both bring Agla Rufa. This is what Rabbi Lezer was. Yerushalayim doesn't bring Agla Rufa, and if the head was in one place and his body was in another place, you bring the head to the body. The name of words of Rabbi Lezer. Kiva says you bring the body to the head. But where would they measure? In this case, when the head and the body were separate, Rabbi Lezer says, generally, when you measure on the mitiburi from his belly button, Rabbi Kiva says from his nose. Rabbi Yaakov says from the place where he was cut, his neck. Now the Gemara says, what's the reason why Rabbi Eliezer that he said that they bring to Agla Rufus? He says that it's very possible to measure and to know exactly that it's exactly in between two cities. You don't say they bring a beshutfis because you're not sure. You say each one has to bring one. Kreva, even krevis. Even if there are two of them that are close, you also bring. It's not only single, it's double. Einstein doesn't bring Egla Rufa because it said Larishta that was inherited in Yerushalayim was never divided for the Shvatim. If his head was in one place and his body in another place, you bring one. What do you bring close to each other? So what are they arguing about? If they're arguing about related to where you measure, you bring what do you bring close to another? Where you measure? It says in the later part of the Mishnah, from where do you measure? So obviously, in the beginning, we're not talking about related to measuring. So Yitzchak says we're talking about a mes mitzvah. A mes mitzvah, someone who dies, there's no one to bury him, he gets buried in a place. So the question is, where does he get buried? Where his body is, you bring the head to the body, or where his head is, you bring the body to the head. And Rabbi Akiva says you bring the body to the head. What is the argument? Because one says that the body, wherever was killed, the body falls right away and the head rolls. The other one says that the head falls where you killed him and the body moves along. A little bit of space. From where they measure? What is the argument where they measure? From the belly button or from his nose? So the question is, where is his main life? Some say his main life is from his nose. Some say his main life is from his belly button. So she says maybe they're arguing the same argument from where a baby is formed, where we learn that some say from the belly button, some say, and from there it spreads out, and some say from the and others argue. So we would say no. Maybe they both agreed that when the baby is formed starts with the belly button, but that's all related to the baby forming. But once the baby's formed, then the question is where the baby gets its life from, where the person gets its life from. And some say it's in the nose, like it says that the breath of life is in the nose. And Rabbi Yaakov says, and the other one says no, it still remains from the place where he was formed. Well, Rabbi Yaakov says from the place where his neck was cut, that's where you measure, because it says that I'll give you on the necks of those who were killed. So therefore we do it that way. A new Mishnah. The Mishnah says, then once they measured and everything, the elders of Yerushalayim left, and then the elders of the city that is found guilty, they have to bring a goat that was never had a yoke on it, and even if it has a mum, a blemish, it doesn't make it prohibited. You bring it to a certain nachal, a certain brook. Asad means it's tough, it's hard. Even if it's not hard, it's also kosher. The earth is not hard, and you cut it with a big knife from the back of its neck, and the place where it happens, you're not allowed to plant there or do any work there, but you're allowed to dye their flax and to clean out stones. And the elders of the city wash their hands in that place, and they say, we did not spill this blood, and we did not see it. So the question is, do we think that they actually spilled the blood? And what they're saying is that it didn't happen directly through us, and we wouldn't let them go without any food. We didn't know about it. All right, we wouldn't let him go without food. We wouldn't let him go without Leviah, without escorting him outside the city. And then the Kohanim say that forgive your Jewish people that you have redeemed Hashem, and don't put any. There should be no pure blood, clean blood spilled amongst the Jewish people. So they don't have to say Adam, and it will be, and it will be, and it was atoned. The blood of this person was atoned, but the Ruach HaKodesh is saying, the Divine Spirit is saying that when you do this thing, the blood will be atoned and everyone will be fine and good.